What's going on, everybody? This is episode 4 of Tie Like a Pro, and I'm your host, Gunnar Brammer. Today is all about heads. We're going to talk about streamer head designs. And basically for this week, hopefully one a day here, we're going to start whipping off 4 styles of articulated streamer and single hook streamer fly heads. And there's a big picture application at the end of this that I'll pull together for you. But, and this is kind of my opinion, but heads are really the most important aspect of a fly. I don't really care what you do for a tail or a wing or a body. It's really just kind of just silhouette and length and proportionality, and a lot of it's movement. And those kind of tailing materials are designed to accentuate basically what the head does. The wing materials are designed to accentuate and move and breathe according to the head's design and purpose. So if you know, of all the episodes, kind of head design is the one thing that I struggled with for the longest time. When I learned how to tie, basically I could tie a tailing material on and then put another tailing material on and then put another tailing material on. I was like, I'm never moving up this hook shank. Like, I don't understand how to get from the bend to the eye. Like, it was horrible. And when I finally did, I was like, now what? And I'd just do like a thread head and be like, done, like ta-da. Which, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, those classic kind of bucktail flies and all that stuff are excellent little darter bugs, and they fish to beat hell. They're great little flies. So this is a little bit just a different take on it. But something I want to go over is, and then if you think about head design, if you think about streamers, the head's the first thing that comes into contact with the water. As soon as you impart slack, you know, if you're doing a jerk strip, the whole point of a jerk strip is to create a moment of slack. It's not like slack like you can't set the hook. It's like you jerk it, and when you're stripping back, that fly has no tension on it. That fly can move, dig, push, jerk, surf, ride, whatever. It's that momentary slack that allows the fly to swim, and it's the head design that generates the swimming action. Head design's everything. It's either weighted or neutrally buoyant, or maybe it's buoyant, or it's going to surf, or it's going to jerk, or it's going to cut, right? It might dig or dive. Like, head design is the thing to really learn, because you can basically take an articulated bugger platform and use bugger materials, either schlappen, marabou and chenille, and you can basically generate any fly design by swapping out these heads that will kind of be interchangeable for you. And then you take your tail and wing and to basically maximize and generate the silhouettes you want, the color combos you want, the bulk you want. And that's just very simple pick and choose, simple problem solving type stuff. So this is episode 4 of Tie Like a Pro, part 1. We're going to do each head design differently. There's 4 designs that I want to go over. Basically, we have jerk flies, and there's 2 ways to build the jerk fly, and we'll go over that, and we'll go over hooks. Basically, for every head design, I'll go over kind of considerations for that design as well. Then we're going to have articulating flies, which in my opinion are kind of these water push style heads on a neutrally buoyant, sometimes weighted chassis. And then you have swim bugs. And swim bugs to me are going to be like zoo cougars and D&Ds, SIDs, ragdollies, this kind of buoyant fly or unweighted fly paired with a full sinking line. And then we're going to have jig flies. And jig flies are very simple, cone head, lead eyes, whatever, kind of with sparse heads and collars. And you can vary that, and we'll get into that. So, part 1, jerk fly heads. I'm going to show you guys how I tie my kind of tear mender, super intense epoxy, and like perfectly pinched head. And I'll show you how to do that with and without tear mender. And then I'll talk about the second principle behind building a jerk fly. Maybe we'll get into that first. So, when you're building a jerk fly, because this is part 1 right now, we're starting. When you get into jerk flies, there's really 3 things that matter that I can think of right now. Basically, you need a compressed head. A compressed head is going to act like a sail. It's going to catch lateral current, or if you pull it in still water, it'll be pulled, it'll deflect from subtle nuances or whatever, and then it'll get carried off, right? So you need to create this vertical sail. Now, a vertical sail is destabilizing. A vertical sail wants to fall on its side, right? This is stable. it displaces water. This is stable. You think about a leaf falling through the air, right? It wants to fall broadside. Your head wants to lay flat in the water. So you have to upright that, right? And just like a sailboat, we're basically going to put a keel on this head. And your keel comes from your hook mass. Now there's two ways to generate a keel. You can basically pick a wide gap, thick wire hook, which is typically what I do because I like big hooks. So that is very intuitive to me. If you're a fan of thinner wire hooks or smaller hooks, you can add lead below your hook bend. And I'll get a hook. So you got, just your typical hook bend. You put anything, and I need to find a place to contrast that. My throat will work. Anything below your shaft right here, below your hook bend, you put 10 wraps of lead on that, and you can just cover that with thread and glue it or whatever. And that's mass below your axis. Anytime you put mass below your axis, it's a keel function, right? And we're putting a hook bend and hook wire thickness below our axis, the where we're attaching materials. So that's one and two. What's the third one? Oh, momentum, right? So you strip a fly. If your fly has more viscosity at the head, if you build a water push style head that's designed to jerk, the head's going to slow down and you're not going to have momentum to carry that lateral deflection. So it's really important that I almost always do these jerk flies on kind of thin, tall bait fish silhouettes, usually with kind of synthetics or sparse naturals that don't have a lot of water drag. And you create that momentum either by applying very sparse weight to the front of the hook or you thick wires, right? So the thick wire principle for creating your keel doubles as a momentum principle for carrying a jerk fly into its deflection. If your thin wire doesn't have any weight to it, it's going to be destabilized. You might have too much dubbing on the head. The fly's going to slow down and you'll kind of just get this. And I basically want a fly that I can walk the dog. And I don't always retrieve it like that. One of the most beautiful things about a jerk fly is that if you jerk strip it kind of aggressively, it'll try to deflect and then you pull it tight and you get this whip, and then you can pause it. So you can get a fish to chase. And then you can create an opportunity to show that profile and have a fish kill your fly. And you can sell that counter shade eye spot lateral line that's on Super Jerks and Jerk Juniors and all that, imposters and all that good stuff. So that's basically everything I want to cover on how I build a jerk fly. There's a second principle. And it's a principle it's a momentum thing. It's momentum trains and basically having a head that pushes water, but a head that doesn't have viscosity. And this is kind of how T-bones work, right? You think about Chocolate's T-bone. It's long hackles, a thick wire hook, two shanks. So you're adding mass in line on the chassis. You're adding mass and momentum in line on the chassis. And then you put this big water push head, this big T-bone body tubing, half-inch body tubing head, but it doesn't really have viscosity. It just pushes water. And so what happens is basically the entire fly, that head's pushing water, it's trying to find a low density pocket, and so it's wobbling and deflecting. As soon as it catches something, the entire tail system rams the fly sideways and it jackknifes on itself. And so you can do that with fish mass. You can, like Stroll's Mass Avenger works that way. Brohill's Jackknife works that way. Like Big Booty Deceivers work that way. And so it's this, you have this low viscosity head that's kind of pushy, but really it's the mass of the fly. It's all of the momentum built into the shanks and the chassis and the rear hook and the front hook, so that when that front fly kind of deflects, the whole back of the fly pushes it forward and you get your profile show. So there's two ways to do it. One's the thin vertical head on a keel hook. This, not a keel hook, but on a hook, a large wide gap hook that functions as a keel. A keel hook would be like a Texas rig. And then the other way is just building mass, building momentum on a sparse fly with this kind of low viscosity water push head. And fish mass are absolutely excellent for that, especially in the trout realm. So those are the two major concepts that you need to grasp. I'm going to go over my kind of specialty, which is the thin profiled dubbing jerk heads. So to build this head, you need dubbing. And I'm going to demonstrate for you guys with one of my favorites, which is Frankenfly Monster Dub. And I'm going to do kind of a blend and fade. Where's my weight? It's back here somewhere. I'll find it real quick. There it is. But we're going to do olive over yellow kind of throat bleeding into a white chin. So Monster Dub, your other one is, and it's one of my favorites also, is Laser Dub. And then the third is Fly Fish Food Bruiser Blend. And Bruiser Blend comes in full and half lengths, which is really nice if you're tying these miniaturized. Like if you're going to tie like a size, or an articulated size 6 jerk fly, Bruiser Blend Junior would be really nice to work with. So those are your 3 primary dubbings. The other thing that's really important is your eyes. Your eyes create the height of your jerk head. Your eyes create the volume. You'll see on almost all of my flies that are designed to jerk, I use 7 millimeters and up. 8 millimeters is probably average. If I get into a pike fly, which is going to be about a 4/0 hook, I'll use 10 millimeters. And then when I get into mega jerks, it's 13 to 15 millimeter eyes paired with a 6/0 hook. So this is a 2/0. I love 8 millimeter eyes on a 2/0. It's nice, it's tall enough, it's deep enough, it gets a good jerk action. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate. Monster Dub, Frankenfly Monster Dub with an 8 millimeter eye is absolutely prime. So I'll get the camera low here and we'll zoom in on this jerk head. And I'm going to tie 2 styles. Remember, we're going to do a tear mender, which is my preference. And then I'll show you guys how to do a gel super glue style because there's some different aspects to that. So check it out. So the most important thing, and the thing I think people struggle with the most when I've seen either pictures or I taught how to tie a jerk junior in a class one time. And the biggest thing people struggle with is tying with too much bulk. You should see this dubbing is super, look how thin that head is. It's super ultra thin, it's super light. You basically are using it for height. And when you use tear mender, and tear mender, this is Bish's original tear mender. This is the glue that I use. This is the bee's knees right here. And the reason why is it's liquid rubber is basically what that is. It's liquid rubber. And so when you build this head, and this is, in my opinion, the most durable head system, and the reason why is because I'm able to saturate that dubbing, glue the eyes not only to the dubbing, but through the dubbing, to the hook, and to each other. And when you think about putting an eye on a hook, your hook shank is a little thin diameter thing, and you're putting this big tall eye on here. If a fish can bend that eye, boom, you just broke your gel super glue or your whatever glue you're using in your epoxy. But I can fill this now with liquid rubber, the space between the eyes, and create basically a rubber cement head so those eyes don't deflect in and break away from your hook shaft. So it's one of the most durable systems ever. So we're going to come in with our Frankenfly Monster Dub. Something I'm going to do, you pull it out of the pack and you just want to orient those fibers, create nice length to those fibers. Need a little bit more here. I dare you. This is a challenge. I dare you to tie this head too sparse. If you can tie this head too sparse, at about 5%, and that's the density you should be tying with. And that's the density I tie with, create the thinnest jerk head possible. Now I like to stack these fibers basically just 50-50. That first one I might do 60 back, 40 up front just to get a little bit of taper in there, but it's not a big deal. And you can see, and I'll mention it on this tie, I get this very, very top and bottom only. I do not let these fibers bleed at all onto the sides. It's a very accurate pinch wrap, right? And we talked about how you can spin your thread if you need to so that it falls against your fingers so that you can get a very accurate wrap. And so this is, I'm pinching this material so it's a dense core, it's really thin. Going to come up with a loose wrap and pull it straight down so it's only on the bottom of my hook. I do not let it roll onto the sides of my hook basically at all. And the reason why is I want a nice thin profile, and you create a thread base inside that head that's going to be kind of oval. It's going to be an oval that you can adhere your eyes to, and it's going to grab those eyes quite a bit better than if you distribute it around your hook shank in all directions. It'll create a very round ball that's really difficult for your eyes to adhere to because obviously your eyes are flat. And I'll show you a really quick way to help flatten that base as well. But again, just coming in with another stack. It's a 2-stack head for most of my designs except for an imposter. You can do a single stack head if you crowd the eye. And what I typically do is I'll do 30 back, 70 forward, and that 30 will support your 70 and create a nice tall head that'll bleed into your wing fairly seamlessly. So again, just top and bottom. That might be a little too dense. And again, I dare you to tie this too sparse. You should literally be trying to tie this too sparse. And obviously don't use like 2 strands. Be like, haha, Gunnar, I tied it too sparse. But, you know, anytime I kind of design a new fly or tie with a new technique, the first thing most people do, the first thing I always do is I tie it too dense. I tie it too dense and then I overcorrect, tie it too sparse, add about 5%, and that's about perfect. So I'm going to cut this off here. And that's our head. You can see it's all top and bottom. You should be able to see through to the core of your fibers. You can see through to my thread wraps. Now here's a trick, because I want this head to look seamless. I want this head to kind of have this nice clean line going off behind the eye. And what you do is you pinch these fibers and you drag just the edge of them to the side of the hook before you comb this out. It looks like my battery's going to die here, so I'm going to swap camera batteries and we'll get back to doing this. But you simply just pinch these fibers, slightly, very slightly drag them to the side of your hook, so when you comb this out, you'll get a really nice clean line for your color stack, and it won't really blend or fade, or it'll just create a nice clean side. And then you comb it out. Very cool. So we got our head stacked, top and bottom only. Manually pulled those fibers slightly to the sides. You can see how thin that head is, and I haven't even put eyes on it, right? Now, I think I got a comment from a friend who was working for Terramender the first time, and he didn't really understand how much density to use, like how much Terramender to put on it. This, by the way, is a Loon applicator bottle. The Terramender on the bottle I showed you is really big and not it's not easy to control. This little Loon, I've had this bottle, I've filled it up 3 times now. It's lasted me a year and a half. It's probably been used on over 1,500 to maybe 2,000 flies. So you just need 1 bottle of Terramender and 1 Loon applicator bottle, and you're basically good to go for the rest of your life. But that's what I use, and it'll prolong the life of your Terramender also. But I'm going to come in, I'm going to hold my vise on the side, and I'm going to literally saturate this. And I'll try to show you guys this. Obviously, I kind of need to be able to see what I'm doing. But you fill this entire dubbing, right? I talked about how it's a liquid rubber, and you can fill in the space between the dubbing so that your eyes can't really flex around your hook shank. They can't wobble around that hook shank because you're filling this with rubber. The space between the eye you fill with rubber to create a super solid head. Now this Terramender, it's liquid, right? And it's not super sticky. You can rub it off your fingers if you get it on your fingers. If you get it on your eye, you can rub it off your eye real quick. So your eye's not going to grab right away, and you have a lot of working time to get your eye perfectly 50-50, the right distance away from your hook eye. It gives you a lot of time to control your head. I'm going to come in and saturate this other side. You can see how much I'm putting on here. The whole head is white with Terramender. Now that Terramender, it'll dry clear, so you don't got to worry about that. And as soon as you're done, blow any bubbles out of here that you have. Wipe your tip away. I'm physically pushing, squeezing on my bottle, blowing a little bit out, and then put a tip on there. And that'll last forever. Then we'll just get this other eye on here. You get those eyes just right. You get this eye just right. You pull that dubbing back, right? And the beautiful thing about these Terramender heads is there's no trimming whatsoever. I'm able to use that dubbing at full length, however I stack it on there and whatever density I stack it on there to create that silhouette. There's no trimming because I can force that dubbing backwards with the Terramender. And so there's going to be a little bit of difference if you're using gel super glue. And that's what we're going to go over real quick. after I get this in my vise here. So here's the secret to getting the way I do my heads, to getting this super ultra thin 100% epoxy dubbing head. Tweezers. Tweezers are the bomb. And basically it's just going to put pressure on these eyes, squeeze them together. It's basically, I need a light here, forgive me for a sec. Come in, rest that on my eyes, pull on my dubbing. You can see, you should be able to see Tearmender basically saturate out of your dubbing. And this is, it's not easy. It's fairly technical, and this is worth every single step, because to me it's like, if you're going to put eyes on a fly, they should last anywhere from 50 to 100 fish. If you're going to take the time to put eyes on a fly, then they better not fall off. And this is the best way I've found to do it. I've had flies with these Tearmender heads that have caught 100 fish. They still got both eyes on them and they still fish. And that's important to me. So I'll just leave that on there. That's set up and ready to go. I will literally let this dry for hours. It doesn't need that long. It needs about 15, probably 10 to 15 minutes. You can take those tweezers off and that head will finish curing perfectly pinched like that. And you can epoxy it immediately after that, which is obviously going to slow the dry time for the Tearmender. But I like to let that set up for as long as I can. Sometimes if I'm doing a production run, I'll let it dry overnight and I'll come back and do them all in the morning. So that's that, and I'll show you guys how to epoxy that once that's dry. And we're going to come in and do a gel super glue head, and I'll show you guys some considerations with that. So you'll have to forgive me, I just literally tied a 3-second bait fish using only ripple ice fiber, and just tied it in 80-20, 70-30, 60-40. Trim the top up a little bit, but 3 stacks. This is a nice thick wire 1/0 Ahrex trout predator hook. Plenty thick enough wire, wide enough gap for a single hook jerk fly with a 8mm eye. It's going to give that some good momentum and keeling action. And I'm going to come in and do the exact same head. I'm going to stack it the exact same, but I'm going to stack it 10% denser, and I'm going to let that roll slightly under the sides of the hook, and I'll show you guys why when we get to the head. So I'm going to fast forward through this, or I might skip it, but stack it 10% denser, absolutely same material, Frankenfly Monster Dub, basically 50-50 top and bottom, 2 stacks, slightly denser, a little bit sloppier, and we'll do a Loctite gel super glue head, and I'll show you guys that. So I'm going to come in, and because this is kind of fatter and rounder and I can't tame that down and pinch that with Tearmender, I'm going to come in, kind of just loosen this up a little bit and do a flush cut right on the side of my hook and take down some of that dubbing. I literally want to be able to epoxy, not epoxy, but I want my gel super glue to go all the way to my hook shank. It's going to give you the best durability. If you can, you're going to glue the eyes together. So come in here, just rough cut this, kind of clean that up. Pinch that head, get that head a little bit vertical. You want those materials basically just top and bottom with your scissor cuts. And the reason why I tied that in a little bit sloppier is so that I had this material on the side to kind of cut flush while still having my veil, while still having this enough material to create my contrast. Just going to sparsen that up a little bit more. The density of all this is something you're just going to have to practice and get used to, unfortunately, without me there to show you guys. Comb that out. So we have a nice thin vertical head that we cut into shape like that. I'm going to come in with some eyes now. Take a jab of Loctite gel super glue. If you use like a liquid like a Zappa gap, it'll soak into your head too quickly. I need my light for this. It'll soak into your head and basically saturate your dubbing and cure basically before you can get an eye on there. I find it really difficult to do. I do not like using Zappa gap for doing heads like this. And if you put your gel super glue right on your hook shank, it'll give you really good accuracy as to your eye placement, and I find you glue your thumbs to your eyes way less frequently. So I have a drop right dead center. You can see that reflecting light right dead center on my hook shank. Come in with my eye. I have plenty of working time because of that gel super glue doesn't set up right away. Push that flat, and now I have a super ultra thin head. I cut my dubbing to the desired, vertical silhouette, and I'll show you guys this. I'll take it out of the vise and show you. Well, that's how I do a gel head, and I'm going to come in now. You can see how thin that is, right? I'm going to come in now, and this is up to you. You don't have to do this. It's a bonus step. It depends on how dense you did your dubbing, but I'm typically going to come in, comb this out real quick, and I'll contour my dubbing into my head. This came out pretty good for having not done this in a year. Sparsen that up, create that silhouette, contour your eyes. Now the reason why I want to contour my eyes really nice and close is because I'm going to come in and epoxy this with UV resin. Alright guys, so this the Terramender head here is dry, and I wanna point something out. So I did actually finished and epoxied this gel super glue head. And something that's really important when you do that gel super glue, obviously you can't really fill in that vertical gap between the eyes. And so what you do is you can fill that vertical gap with resin, right? And that'll help add durability the same way I filled in that gap with liquid rubber. You can fill it in with resin. It's going to make your fly a little bit heavier, but that's not really the biggest concern. But people, they basically want to know how I get the consistency out of my heads and how I tie them like this. And I'll do like a dozen of them that all look the same. And you have to understand it's because of the Terramender. You can see this head right now, and this head is 100% spot on perfect. And it's nothing that has to do with the UV resin. All the technicality in getting these heads consistent is all in Terramender. So this Terramender is completely firmed up right now, and it's perfect to shape. It has all the dimensions I want, and those eyes are sealed on there in place, and I'm going to coat them with the UV resin. But none of the technicality, none of the skill is really in the resin. The resin, you just kind of put it on, drag it off, protect the eyes, add durability, give the head a nice clean look to it. But it's the Terramender that allows me to do that. When you have these dubbed heads with gel super glue, and I came in and I trimmed that, all those, I had all this dubbing that was slicked back. I came in and cut it to contour my eyes. Now all these fibers are sticking up. My resin soaks into those fibers, and it becomes really difficult to get a nice, smooth, clean look. So I want to walk you through the UV resin work on this Terramender head, show you exactly how I get my heads to be super consistent. I'll leave you guys with some takeaways on the video, and then I just want to make a quick statement about super jerks and a few of my other jerk patterns. But I'm going to turn my light on here so I can see, get you guys close enough so that you can see. And so yeah, so my favorite resin is Deer Creek's UV Diamond Fine Flex, 100% tack free. It's a little bit flexible, so if you make a mistake, you can actually come in with a razor blade and kind of trim that up and clean that up. My favorite light is Deer Creek's Laser Pen laser diode torch, and this laser diode has a pen cap that it comes with, and the cap acts as a diffuser that increases the surface area of the pen, but obviously it kind of it diffuses the power of it. And if you take that cap off, and I don't know if you'll be able to see anything behind me here, but look, like that's, I have the pen pointed backwards. That's like 10 feet away. Like you could cure a head, at 20 feet away with this thing and absolutely light it up. Like the laser pen without the nozzles, crazy intense. So that's my favorite setup at the moment. And then you'll need a bodkin. And the bodkin's what I use to kind of drag the resin around with. But I'm just going to do a nice clean little drop right on top. Let that run down. Make sure I got both sides. If you do too much, it's harder to control. It's easier to do 2 or 3 light steps than one big step at the end. And the whole point of the resin is durability. It's all about protecting and coating the edges of the eyes, right? So those eyes, because they're filled in with liquid rubber, they're not going to bend in and flex on each other and break away from that attachment point. So that's really no longer a concern. That entire head is 100% saturated. It's crazy durable. But what can still happen is the tooth can still lift the edge of your eye, right? And if it can peel that off, it's basically the most effective angle to lift an eye is from this back side or the front side, and to lift that with a tooth. And so if you can coat that head with UV resin, you basically have the most durable head system that you can make, in my opinion. And you don't have to come in with razor blades and clean up really tiny bumps. It bothers me, believe it or not. It's like I'm a little OCD about it. Once I've done a head that doesn't have any bumps, now I don't like them if they have any bumps at all. So that's just me. It doesn't change the way it fishes. So it's just simple, top, bottom. The primary step is going to be when we coat the eyes and drag it off over the backside and over this little top and bottom work that we just did right here. And you can see that tear mender dries clear. Don't be afraid when you put that on the first time. It's white and milky and you're like, oh man, what'd I do? Because it dries up perfectly clear. And again, all of that technical ability, all of that consistency, all your ability to produce a dozen heads that all look the same, it's all in your ability to control and shape the tear mender, which has a really long working time. And if you mess it up, you can add a little bit more and it'll kind of soften up again. You can pull that fiber, you can pull your head whatever direction you need it to go. You can push your head up if you need to fill the space. I push my craft fur heads up all the time. If I basically tied my craft fur in 2 spars, I'll physically push that material up towards my hook eye and I'll kind of fill in a dead space there. The nicest thing about the tear mender is my head right now is solid. So when I drag this off, it doesn't really soak down into the dubbing, so I don't need a lot of resin. It soaks down under that first kind of rough layer that the tear mender created. And so it allows me to keep my head nice and light and sparse, and I don't have to use too much resin. Helps my resin go a long way. And it's just the coating of that tear mender surface is viscous enough for that. I'm going to come in with a fatter light here and just double this up. But it's able to get a hold of it. It's able to sink into that first kind of porous layer of tear mender that kind of shrink back into the head. But it doesn't soak all the way into the head, which is super nice. So again, I just put a big dollop right on the eye, dragged it off the eye with a bodkin, curing that up. And I'll do the other side later, but I'll talk right now. So hopefully that all makes sense to you guys, and hopefully that's exciting to be able to build a tall, thin profile head like that. That's going to get you a side-to-side kind of walk the dog or whip action. And I talked about 2 styles of heads, right? I talked about these sail heads, something I would classify as a jerk head, and using these thick wire hooks and a wide gapped hook, and that hook not only has enough to kill your bug, which is extremely important, but it also has enough momentum to propel your bug forward and help that fly deflect on an axis like that. But something that's really cool about super jerks, and right, I talked the other option is a momentum fly. It's a momentum trained fly. Super jerk and an articulated jerk fly, it combines the best of both worlds, in my opinion. So you have these tall, thin profile heads thick wire front hook, you get the momentum, keel, and sail. But with your back hook, you have inline momentum, and your back hook should be super sparse. This is like 20 strands of faux bucktail, some craft fur and a craft fur brush, all synthetic, very little water drag. They're all straight fiber materials, right? And when you go into material selection and why you're using something, straight fiber materials are slick. And so what happens is the head not only jerks off to the side like a tail, but then the tail runs into the fly and it physically propels the fly forward and snaps it into a profile show. So the super jerk and articulated jerk flies, with the head design of a jerk fly, which works on a single hook fly, but it also combines the momentum train principle of a Mask Avenger or a T-bone or a Bros Hills jackknife, right? Bro Hills jackknife. So it's like the best of both worlds, and a super jerk is kind of truly deserving of the name super jerk. Like if you put this on a non-slip loop knot with about 10-pound test monofilament, oh my goodness, it's like whoom, whoom. It's crazy cool. So I just wanted to leave you with that. That's how I do the UV resin work. Both sides, super thin profile heads. Tear mender it's everything for being able to do quality and consistency, having the time to set up a head, get your eyes level, pinch your eyes so that the dubbing saturates, controlling your dubbing angle to get a nice tall head. The gel super glue work is clean. It's a little bit messier because you come in and trim those fibers. It's a little bit harder to do that UV work, but it's the first step. And this, it's the first step in getting there. This would be the second step. So hopefully you guys are excited about that head design and that idea, and you're comfortable putting that head design on basically any fly, and just selecting, a long slick tail and slick wings, marabou and schlappen basically, or craft fur, bucktail, you're good to go. So that's episode 4 of Tie Like a Pro, part 1, jerk fly heads. Tomorrow is the exciting stuff. We'll be going over articulating flies. I'll show you guys how to tie a sex dungeon head and a stacked dubbing head, which are basically the same technical abilities, working with different materials. And that's going to be we'll do that over lead eyes for our kind of weighted water push articulating style heads. And we'll talk about all that good stuff. So check out tomorrow. And yeah, I'm excited to get to the end of the week so I can introduce the infinite fly principle and bring this all into a big picture scenario so that you guys are like excited. So thanks for watching. Follow along and keep on it. Episode 4's got 4 parts to it, and we're going to be doing head designs all week. So thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.